Please excuse my hoarse voice. I am just getting over the woke mind virus right now. You know how it goes. I sent my kid to drag queen story hour and now the whole house is infected. I'm actually just kidding. But as you can hear, I am sick, so my voice is strained and this video is late. I lost my voice for a week. Anyway,
The woke mind virus.
the goal of this video is to study woke for what it is, not to judge it unless that judgment is funny, and not to criticize it unless that criticism is also funny. I hope to be at least as unbiased with woke as I was with MAGA. That's my goal. If I don't do it, well, I don't do it. I'm trying. So this video will do the following. It will define woke as it is popularly known. We'll decide if woke is real or if it is a hysteria. Who are the players in woke? I'll give a brief history and we'll describe this anti-woke woke dogma. You know, they're all up in their heads out there. And plus we'll give a brief overview as it stands to date. As woke stands to date, we're November 2024. Did MAGA just destroy woke or is it hibernating for now? For the record, I grew up in a very liberal household in a very liberal town. And what has happened over the past 10 years is not the standard liberal values. I first noticed something was different when it was getting out of hand with Mattress Girl. Do you remember Mattress Girl? So this was from about 2015, and there's a student at Columbia called Emma Sulkowitz. She carried this mattress on her back around campus to draw attention to her case. She had said that she complained to the administration about a and they didn't take her complaints seriously. Now, I thought that was just terrible. How could you actually ignore something that violent, so awful? So women started to help Emma carry her mattress. Now, cut forward a month or so, the accused releases these text messages, these back and forth messages, DMs that they'd sent each other. And she was actually asking for this act. So it was no longer a case of he said, she said. There was evidence involved now, and the evidence didn't support her side. Now, if we're holding everybody to the same standard, the party with the evidence usually wins. But for some reason, people were no longer doing that. Now, I posted on Facebook, this is back when I was on Facebook, I posted on Facebook that Mattress Girl, this whole thing that was happening was hurting women who might want to come forward because they would be afraid that they would be called a liar. Now, my friends attacked me and they told me that I need to support Mattress Girl because of feminism. And I'm like, what? It's not feminist to do this. In fact, that idea kind of contradicted the feminism that I grew up knowing. And it kind of meant that women were irrational. I'm like, this isn't any kind of feminism I heard of. Now, if you have to believe in a lie to believe in some sort of ideology, that's a religion at that point. Now, something clicked in my brain that day, and I just realized that what we were dealing with at this point, it went beyond just a simple worldview and was into full-on religion territory now. Now, this was back in 2015. And it wasn't known as woke back then. It was a kind of this social justice progressive movement. Now, remember, we saw a lot of social justice movements all around the world because of social media. I can't stress enough how revolutionary the technology actually was. It was like giving cavemen AR-15s. We saw it all over the Middle East. We saw it in Eastern Europe. Just social media and people being able to communicate just started spreading these ideas. And it was wreaking havoc. It wreaked havoc over a whole populations. Now, the woke mind virus has become a household name since Elon Musk used it to describe this ideology that has taken over the elite classes. Elon, make sure you know what he thinks. He paid $44 billion to make sure that you knew exactly what he thought about these things. So don't take it as an insult if you happen to be infected with the woke mind virus. Did you know that 8% of our DNA is actually ancient viruses? That's like a good portion of our thinking is made up of various thought viruses. This is why I actually like the virus analogy, because yes, viruses can kill you, but if they do, they kill themselves. Anyway, what is the woke mind virus? Did Trump's election put it to an end? Step 1, let's define woke as it is popularly known. Pinning down what woke actually means seems to have eluded many of the semi-professional, professional anti-woke. Do you remember that clip from Brianna Joy Gray when she asked Bethany Mendel to define woke? Bethany Mendel had just written a book about this, so she should have been able to define it, but she just stuttered this stuff about Marxism and she could not give a concise definition. And this is because the anti-woke, this online group of scholars who've made their entire careers out of researching the woke mind virus, they know so much more about it than the rest of us, supposedly. They're really deep into the lore. So when you ask them to explain this in terms that we're all going to understand, they start using terms like social Marxism, but to the uninitiated, which is the rest of us, that's all just academies. Also, academies, it's like legalese, but for academics. It's a language that academics can speak to each other to signal that they are in the same group. If you don't speak it, it means you didn't go to private school and you are too poor. Oh, you're like, but I have a lot more money because I didn't waste it all racking up debts in private school. Well, that just means you're a rich poor and you're beneath them anyway. Either way, you're beneath them. It doesn't matter. You don't speak academies, you're beneath these people. They don't even want to deal with it. That's a criticism for all of academics, not just the woke versus anti-woke. The term woke came into popular vernacular with the Black Lives Matter movement of the 2010s. So back then, stay woke meant to be aware of racism within the American system that expresses itself through laws and regulations, plus the bureaucratic process, and that leaves Black people out, or has historically left Black people out. So being woke is like you are aware of these things. It's kind of like a religious metaphor, but we'll get into that later. It's being awake versus being asleep. So too many Black people use that term on social media and their white allies got a hold of it. They co-opted the word. Woke, the movement, is actually defined by its enemies now, and it extends well beyond Black Lives Matter. Now, woke is an umbrella term for a number of progressive movements. We've got Black Lives Matter, you've got feminism, LGBTQ+, fat acceptance, climate justice, socialism, the list goes on and on. Woke to them is basically all of the modern progressive agenda. Being a progressive 10 years ago, that may have meant that you supported universal health care, you supported gay rights, you supported equal treatment under the law for all races and sexes. I think right now we all support that, but that's not the same as woke. Woke seeks to actually rectify past injustices by lifting specific groups over others. And when I say past, I mean distant past. I remember losing the fight to woke, the progressive fight to woke. I remember that. I told you the story with Mattress School. One day I was with my peers and we were all making sense and we were all on the same page. And then it happened like that. It was like a few weeks or a few months later. It seemed as though a lot of them had gone like a little loopy. And it was just like, what is happening here? So back to woke in my definition, which I am saying after years of extensive research as to why my side of working class progressives, myself included, got absolutely destroyed by this movement of identitarian progressives. So the definition, the continual process of breaking down old norms and establishing new ones that center Black and brown people and non-traditional lifestyles to an egalitarian end. The continual process of breaking down old norms and establishing new ones. Well, clearly we're going to get to a point where everything is good, right? No. Woke always keeps changing and adapting. Gay marriage is not enough. We need to teach gender theory in elementary school, okay? Equality amongst the races, that is not enough. We need to check white privilege. My new favorite is, oh God, I love this. Black men are the new white people of the Black community. Like, shut up. That doesn't even make any sense. But it does once you realize that progress needs to continue. Black Lives Matter becomes Black Trans Lives Matter. This is why a lot of people got thrown out of the progressive movement around 2015. We were actually happy with the social progress that there was. They needed more. So establishing new norms. Now, this has been a goal of the woke movement, but in my opinion, it has been a failure. The woke demographic has higher rates of mental illness and lower birth rates. Norms are norms for a reason, whether we like them or not. All right, let's get back to the definition. Establishing new norms that center Black and brown people and non-traditional lifestyles to an egalitarian end. This is where the leveling out comes in. People can't be too high or too low. This is where the woke critics accuse it of Marxism or seeking to bring all people to the same level. Okay, this is where the debate over equality of outcome comes in. We heard that a lot in this last election. This is basically from each according to his ability to each according to their means. Okay, I was gonna say by egalitarian means in this, but that would mean that each person should be given equality of opportunity. But I think at this point we all agree on that. Okay, everyone should get the chance to distinguish themselves and achieve great things. We all agree. It's why we have public schools. It's why we have government-funded scholarships, Pell Grants, etc. Even Republicans will say they want that now. But Harris doubled down on equality of outcome during the election, so I said to an egalitarian end, and that distinction really matters a lot. We see it socially with fat acceptance. For a while, it had to be that obese people were no less beautiful than thin people. This only applies to women, by the way. Men never got this treatment. Men never got it. A fat woman is just as beautiful as a thin woman. What about a man? Oh, you ugly. You just big. You ugly. Shut up. It's about women. That was kind of funny. I have to admit, that was kind of a funny turn of events. Okay, back to my point. For a while, we had to say that obese, unhealthy looking women were actually no less beautiful than thin women. And if someone said that they were a beautiful woman, even if they were a fat old man, we had to say, yes, you are a beautiful woman. That was peak woke. It actually got very strange. It was the most obvious with beauty because the average person can see that in action and they can distinguish it. You don't need a college degree for all that. Now, the enemy of the woke are called the anti-woke, and they come in all stripes. Their most extreme thinks that woke is a tool of globalists who don't believe in national borders. They want to destroy the nation state and make some sort of diversity utopia run by old cat ladies and transgender CEOs. This goes along with the Great Replacement theory, which we discussed in the Cult of MAGA. The Great Replacement theory is basically a white supremacist theory, which says that the global elites are trying to replace the white race with mixed people and migrants who don't believe in Jesus. And if they do believe in Jesus, well, they're Catholic, so whatever. Now, to me, this is very extreme. So yes, the anti-woke theories can get very conspiratorial, and they borderline on cultural Red Scare type fear-mongering. But you know what? As far as the Red Scare goes, the Soviets were trying to destroy us. You can't forget that. Is this thing even real? Very few people will say that they are a woke person. They might say, or they would have said a few years ago, yes, I'm woke, but they won't say that they are a woke. Woke is what other people call the woke, what the enemies of the woke call them. The anti-woke have identified and labeled a social current within modern culture. But also, people see patterns that aren't necessarily there. Humans are always looking for patterns like that. And sometimes we get it wrong. Is woke a conspiracy theory? Is there anything there? Or is the anti-woke just pathologizing social progress? I used to see a lot, I don't see it so much anymore, but I used to see people say woke when they can't say the N word. That was a term that was going on around a lot. So are the anti-woke just people calling the woke people uppity? This is a fair questioning. It's not gaslighting to ask it. Now I saw this headline. The headline is, younger Brits are ditching English classics like ham and mustard in favor of fancy woke fillings. It was bad enough when white people took the word woke from black people. Now boomer Brits have taken it for the culinary page. Great, fine, whatever, it's 2024, everything's happening. Woke to them means that you like olives and continental cheeses. Okay, fine. After extensive research into this, I don't think olives have a side, either red or blue. And to the British, any flavor stronger than mustard is considered woke. So this is what lefties mean when they say the anti-woke are hysterical. This is crazy. Point taken. Now, one side, either the woke or the anti-woke, is in the middle of a mass hysteria. Well, we can see from the burned down cities and the cut off that it isn't the woke who are in the middle of a mass hysteria. You fill one hand with ideas and you fill the other hand with cut off, and we see which one is heavier. Okay, I was on the fence about this for a while, but you shall know them by their fruits. They said minors were not getting gender surgery, and that's not true. We have the receipts now. Do No Harm, which is a conservative nonprofit, found 5,700 instances of minor gender reassignment surgeries. It's about to go before the Supreme Court. It's going to get messy. So if this was a problem, why did the establishment lie about it? Why did they say there were only a handful? Then we see that it's actually thousands, okay? If they come out and just said, yo, we're doing this a lot and it's right, I'd be more likely to believe them than them lying and then turning out, oh, real number is 5,700 billed to insurance. We don't know how many were paid out of pocket. So to me, this signifies hysteria, mass hysteria. Just for the record, I do have a doctor friend that says the medical establishment was bullied into giving out gender reassignment surgeries for minors and going along with this whole woke thing. Medicine, she said, is a very conservative field and they just didn't go woke out of nowhere. That's what my friend says, at least. She's a doctor. She's brilliant. Now, this is an example of a larger problem, which is that the woke ideology has made its way out of universities and it's now in corporate America and government. Jonathan Haidt, we love him. Jonathan Haidt has a theory that millennial and Gen Z graduated from these universities and took the ideas with them. I think there is some truth to that. Plus, young people control social media, and social media is how we gauge public opinion. But there are also more institutional reasons why this may have happened, like corporations getting credit for being more progressive. They call this an ESG score, environmental social governance. That affects the stock prices without actually affecting how much the company makes. It's like, what? Do you make more? Did you make more? So why did your stock price go up? I don't like stocks. I've explained this many times. Don't like the market system. Now, ESG scores came into use from around 2007. They are an international push towards making businesses more progressive. So this is a huge factor as to why corporations and therefore their marketing teams are becoming more woke. Their jobs actually depend on it. Their livelihood actually depends on it. Environmental, social, and governance really does sound good, but the devil is in the details here. We got to look. We've got to be careful about accepting things that just sound good. They say that the devil will come as an angel of light for a reason. The Bolshevik pitch sounded really good. How did that turn out? So this ESG score is a value judgment on American companies from forces outside US borders. It's too easy for someone to manipulate it and gain power. Like, these bitches forgot that men are trying to be tyrants. These bitches forgot that men are always trying to make themselves king. We used to be on the lookout for it. It's like, oh, you're trying to make yourself king, stab you. You're trying to make yourself king, stab you. That's the way it used to go. We forgot to stab. Okay, that's my super congested history lesson. We need to be stabbing more of these people who seek to make themselves tyrants. We at least, it's a joke. That's a joke. We at least need to be on the lookout for it, because that desire in humanity hasn't changed. And who are these people trying to govern our corporations? It should just be the consumer and their profits and their business, not this other stuff. But that's a whole other video. But money alone doesn't account for the spread of woke ideology. It's in government, okay? It's in nonprofits. It's an idea that has mass popular appeal. Progressive politicians have become very confused. Politicians are nearly always audience captured. Like, the very definition of politician, meaning that they have to be voted in by the public, the majority of their constituents, they're going to hold similar views, maybe the same exact views that their constituents hold. Their job security depends on them being audience captured. So they don't really go against their voters too much and stay in office. So progressives in California have become convinced that nearly all people are honest and good, so we should be lenient on criminals. Turns out a lot of people are not honest or good, and these people are called criminals. And every generation before ours has not only figured out what criminality is, but they've written it down for us. Watch out for criminals. It says, you open a bottle that's washed ashore onto the beach. There's a note in a bottle and it says, watch out for criminals. And it's all that old school cursive. Like, y'all figured it out. Why don't we know? We forgot. Now, like I just said about the audience capture, I blame the voters about as much as I blame the politicians. California got caught up in this madness starting about 10 years ago. I was probably involved as a voter. Woke politicians, they let these meth addicts roam the streets and assault women because we didn't want to infringe on these meth addicts' freedoms. So to insist on a safe street was to demean our unhoused neighbors. So what about the freedom to not get assaulted? California, they're just coming out of this hysteria now. I have lived through it. There was a non-rational trend in recent public policy, and it took over the institutions. This is the woke mind virus that the enemies have identified. So yes, in this YouTuber's opinion, the woke mind virus is real, and we tested it in the field. And yes, woke does act like a cult. Far left progressive woke people are more likely to cut off friends and family who do not adhere to their extreme beliefs. Some of these beliefs were unknown until relatively recently, but to not adhere to them is completely unforgivable. Gender ideology, for example, is a recent phenomenon only coming into play within the past decade, at least popularly. But not agreeing that a person can change genders can get you cut off from your family. Palestine is another issue. COVID is another. Simply disagreeing with the woke position is enough for them to label you immoral, an immoral person, more so than if you had committed violent crimes. That's nuts. When something breaks up a family, that's cultish behavior. There's no other word for that. Now, I do think MAGA is a cult. I did like an hour-long video about MAGA being a cult, but they're not usually the ones cutting off family members, okay? The woke mind virus can actually ruin many lives. Imagine if someone actually falls for these ideas, for these extreme beliefs, and cuts off their parents or siblings and replaces them with their woke friends. How many of you have kept friends for 20 or more years? Honestly, how many of you have kept them? I have one. Most people have none. Okay? So it's real. Family is important. Now, I don't know if it's the woke mind virus that causes people to cut off their family, or if people who are willing to cut off their family are more attracted to woke ideology. You know, I believe that people go with ideologies that rationalize their natural instincts. I think we're just like animals trying to explain ourselves for the most part. So yes, the woke mind virus is not only real, but it is harming people who get caught in it. It gives people a false hope that the world will provide all people with equity, which means more will be given to those with less to put them on equal footing, basically. It's not going to happen. It gives people false hope that there's going to be reparations for slavery. Seriously, don't quit your day job on that. I mean that literally. Do not quit your job on that. It's just a talking point. They will colonize Mars and make it the 51st state before they give Black people reparations. Even if Black people deserve reparations, okay? It gives people false hope that potential partners will not judge them on their appearances. Potential partners absolutely will judge you on your appearance. It gives transgender people false hope that cisgender people actually do believe trans women are women or trans men are men just because it's a slogan that people mindlessly repeat. They do not believe that. They're just repeating a slogan. This is the most cruel because some people actually fall for this and then they later complain on Reddit that they can't pull who they think they should pull, that their friends have gassed them up and so that they look hot, but the public disagrees. That's not fair. You got to tell your friend when they have spinach in their teeth. Oh, to God, you would always tell me if I had spinach in my teeth. The actual degree to which reality is negotiable depends on what you are trying to negotiate. We can negotiate civil laws. We absolutely can. We cannot negotiate natural laws. Some woke beliefs and slogans are straight up magical thinking. Moving on, who are the players here? The players come from a lot of disadvantaged groups in society. The groups that have been traditionally oppressed, ignored, or insulted, they have historical grievances, okay? Let's not forget how cruel people were to each other before 80s movies could teach us to be better. To Black people, to women, to homosexuals, to communists, or even just overweight people. People have been so cruel. Humans are just awful. Even in England, they had all these white people, so they started being cruel to redheads. Like, you have to be cruel to someone? What? I guess we're animals like that. So the supposed spokespeople for all these disadvantaged groups, they now want to right historical wrongs and to see that those prejudices are not repeated. People make whole careers out of being these supposed spokespeople, but the woke activists don't necessarily come from these groups, okay? If Black people are 13% of the population, it doesn't mean that they are 13% of woke activists. If you go over who calls themselves progressive activists, you'll actually see that that group is more homogeneously white than the other group of Democratic voters. So they're the least diverse of the Democratic voters. It's whatever. America's a mostly white country, so I'm not going to fault them too much. Just keep that in mind when you're like, well, all Black people want this, all women want this, all people of color want this. It's like, no. Actually look at the demographics from that group and don't project onto Black people or people of color or all women what this particular extreme group is saying, please. Now, Black Americans happen to be the most visible member of the woke movement. I wonder why. The term originally was an in-group signal to conscious Black people. Stay woke, that meant to stay aware of systematic oppressions within the system being the justice system, the credit system, and the banking system, plus larger society as a whole. The system was built under white supremacy, that is true, and the fear is that the system is not a blank slate that will even allow for racial equality, but that it is fundamentally racist. This is the critical race theory, which has been a huge point of contention within the culture war. So yes, Black Americans are the original woke, but the movement has shifted away from Black Americans so much that it is unfair to say that the woke movement is a Black movement at this point. Maybe Black Lives Matter is a part of it, but it is not a largely Black movement at all. Other identity groups also have plenty of historical grievances. They often model their style of protest after the African American struggle in African American groups. And that's just because Black people historically just paved the way for how to fight the system, how to use these protest tactics. How is it done? And then other people followed. Women, particularly college-educated single women, are the backbone of the woke movement. They are the soldiers. Women didn't get the vote until 1919, and they weren't given basic privileges, basic privileges, like opening a bank account until the 1970s. This is like 50 years ago. A unit of time that we will now refer to as one J-Lo. So if women don't stand up for themselves, they may tear us back down, one cut at a time, until we are living no freer than our grandmothers did 2 J-Los ago. Many feminists call this system the patriarchy. The patriarchy is the sum total of the male-dominated systems that control our lives. This is very similar to the white supremacy system that the Black people were talking about. So I don't see, when you look at what has actually happened, I don't see that reality has borne out that these systems are naturally a patriarchy, because women have become so successful in replacing men. So it's interesting to see the patriarchy being tested and in many cases failing in real time. Glass ceilings are being shattered everywhere in my lifetime. I love to see it. Of course, vested interest here. Now, upper middle class white women are at the forefront of woke. They benefit most from DEI and previously from affirmative action.
Even in DEI specific positions, Black people are underrepresented. Note the overlap in white percentage in the progressive left and DEI officers.
So yes, it's very convenient that they get all of these advantages, but I don't see that they're inauthentic in their desire to smash the white supremacist patriarchy. I don't think they are inauthentic. I think they're genuine. So you look at this documentary and this pair of social justice advocates, one's Indian and one's Black, they're charging $400 for a dinner in which these two will berate these white women for their supposed racism.
How many of you white people would change places with me?
I love the grift. It's a fantastic grift. But you see that men aren't paying for this? LGBTQ. Gay people used to be attacked. They were shunned. They were insulted. They were forced to lead hidden lives up until like the 70s and then the 90s and the 2000s. It's only recently that gay people have been able to live out in the open without fearing for their safety and able to live with their partners. So of course there's a gay lobby. There better be a gay lobby. The LGBTQ movement is a mess right now though, because the larger LGBTQ umbrella is woke. And there is a subsection that is very much not. The LGB wants a divorce from the LGBTQ. They say our goals no longer align. I remember I did a video on that for my Patreon. Can you hear my son screaming in the background? Sometimes he likes avocados. Sometimes he doesn't like avocados. You better catch him on the right day when you give him those avocados. So for all of these groups, it's not just the LGBTQ. For all of these minority groups, there's a section that does want to live the traditional American lifestyle with the same privileges as everyone else. They wanted to be let in. They wanted a seat at the table. They don't want to overturn the table. They don't want to overturn the system. They want to be part of the system to make their money and to get ahead.
That government office building on 25th Street.
Yeah?
We went down to take it over. But they were hiring that day. The brothers walked in with guns. They came out with jobs.
There is another woke part of the group. They want to overturn the system. They want to smash it. They think the system itself is unworkable and they want to tear it down. Personally, I have never seen a real plan from these people for anything to replace the system with. So I cannot, in good conscience, support tearing it down. Okay, I just want to live a good life with my children. That's it. Unfortunately, big unfortunately, the woke does not seem to stand up for the working class, although many of its leaders claim to be Marxists. Funny that, huh? No one seems to be standing up for the working class at all. It's all identity and this high concept social philosophy. This is why much of the working class voted for MAGA. Watch that video. Another group within woke are college graduates. The better the school, the more likely it's woke. Woke ideas spread through the university system. We will discuss later the intellectual roots of woke ideology. But for this, there is a reason why your warehouse manager uncle isn't woke. College graduates, particularly in the humanities, have to go through years of woke indoctrination. Now, with DEI statements, diversity, equity, and inclusion required for the faculty, most of the teachers are also coming from this school of thought. That is not healthy. You have to have diversity of teacher ideology. Overly online people on Tumblr and Reddit tend to also lean woke. The mods have a lot to do with that. I've seen this in real life from hours of extensive research. Whatever, I'm on Reddit. It's fine. It's research. It's research if you use it for a video, isn't it? It becomes research after the fact. Other groups that glob onto the woke, though, that kind of surprised me. The COVID forever maskers, they're woke for some reason. Don't get that, but okay. Honestly, I think if COVID had hit under Biden and not Trump, the situation would be reversed. That's how little respect I have for the mob. Fat acceptance is within the woke. That makes sense because when you think of woke ideology as constant transformation and negotiation of norms, then fat acceptance fits in there too. Fitness has become right wing. It really shouldn't, but it has. Fitness is the ultimate work for reward suffering that there is. And you see why I don't respect the mob. You see why I don't respect the mob. Even fitness is political. And look, I am all for renegotiating beauty norms because when I was coming up, when I was forming ideas, the standard, the norm was for people to be stick thin. And there's no way that they were even menstruating at that size, meaning that they weren't fit either. So that beauty norm was insane and unnatural. It did need to be renegotiated. It just kind of went too far the other way. Now, many of the movements under the woke umbrella come up for legitimate reason. The process is this, basically. There's a problem. People see that there is a problem and they band together and an organization forms to combat the problem. That organization may solve that problem or improve that problem. And the people who work for that organization and form their identity and reputation around that movement, they continue fighting even when they should be doing victory laps. So then they send Horsey to the glue factory. Animal Farm. It's always Animal Farm. All of these movements, plus more that I can't really go into right now, are woke, and they are defined by their enemies. They're the blue hairs, supposedly. This new woke, the blue-haired woke, has co-opted the old woke, the stay woke, which is funny. That's actually funny because Black people are very religious and they don't as a whole support gender ideology, much less than other groups. They are largely materialistic and they want to gain greater wealth for their families. So they're mostly not Marxists. They wouldn't believe in that ideology if you told them about it. I think the musty white people and the Black community, they make such strange bedfellows because mustiness and ashiness is like the greatest sin in the Black community. And these white activists tend to be the mustiest, most unkempt group in America. They're proud of it. These are two extreme ends of the hygiene spectrum. So how did woke become this new Frankenbeast of a movement? A term you have to understand is forced teaming. Forced teaming actually comes up a lot in this. It's from a very popular book called The Gift of Fear. I have it over there somewhere. Anyway, it's when a predator, he says to his victim that they have something in common. So he's going to say, we've got to do this, this, and that. So the term woke has changed meanings, basically. Please no longer use it to apply to the Black struggle. That's actually rude. There are a lot of groups that try to co-opt the Black struggle. These self-identified anti-establishment people, they hide behind Black people. And it bothers me because when they're done with all this, they can just grow out of it. They can grow out of being woke, but I can't grow out of being Black. I can't grow out of a Black phase. I don't have a Black phase. Most white liberals think they are helping to better society. They really do believe that they are doing a good thing, and they have simply failed to question their methods. That's my professional opinion. Also, thank you, white liberals, for being abolitionists and for literally ending slavery. Some of them are the real deal. And you know what? When they were abolitionists back in the day, it wasn't a popular opinion back then. But many of them did die to abolish slavery. The thing about the white liberal that makes them so endearing and so annoying is that they are not materially affected by their causes, oftentimes. This is hilarious because it's like, the fuck? You don't have terrorists on your borders. You don't have drug dealers on your corner. Why are you getting involved? Please stay out of this conflict. But also, you can be too close to a situation and not be able to see it clearly. So here is an excerpt from the Aquarian Conspiracy.
So she is speaking about Jean-François Revel, and she says, she paraphrases, the perturbation would come from the privileged classes, he said, because that is the way of revolutions. They are launched by those disenchanted with the culture's ultimate reward system.
Yes, I know many of you will say that this book is the satanic manual for a new world order. But she makes some solid points, so don't at me, okay? We're going to read the material and judge it. This class, this demographic we are talking about is integral to the United States. They come from an intellectual tradition that you can trace back to the British and their respect for law and morality. It actually is just not innate to human beings. So I love the Northeast white liberal. I'm half Northeast white liberal. Obviously, I am not attacking them. They are the most annoying, smug group, but they are often right. And they have helped a lot of people when they didn't have to. Do you think that it was former slaves or former sharecroppers that are writing all of these laws? There's also the group that makes the movies. They primed the American public for multiculturalism and LGBT acceptance. They were there for Black rights. They were there for women's rights, for gay rights. And yes, for many, it was a purely intellectual pursuit. They were just doing it out of the kindness of their heart. So that brings us to the history. Let's come back. Let's go back. Let's take it back, okay? The woke movement acknowledges the personal power of the individual. So to me, it starts in a place of empowerment. We understand that we are not little drones, that we are individuals, and we don't move as a block. We swarm like fish or birds, and that is true. So we all do have agency. The butterfly effect is real, and we are all potential little butterflies flapping our wings. So not to be a nerd, but we are getting into the concept of uncertainty and chaos. And that came out of like the 1960s. The 1960s and 1970s put our understanding of the world on its head. I cannot stress enough how revolutionary that decade or those 2 decades really were. Now, the woke ideology stems from the evolution in thinking that came along with the hippies and the Age of Aquarius movement. A bunch of upper class white kids smoking weed and doing LSD between college classes. This book called The Aquarian Conspiracy, I just held it up. So this is written in 1979, and it summarizes the California new wave of thinking at that time. It was influential to many of the thought leaders that are now associated with woke, whether or not they are actually woke. Basically, the Aquarian Conspiracy is all about a group of influential people in science, in the arts, and in media who agree to transform society into something better. They say they want to make a new religion, and they did.
A leaderless but powerful network is working to bring about radical change in the United States. Its members have broken with certain key elements of Western thought, and they may even have broken continuity with history. This network is the Aquarian Conspiracy. It is a conspiracy without a political doctrine, without a manifesto, with conspirators who seek power only to disperse it and whose strategies are pragmatic, even scientific, but whose perspectives sound so mystical that they hesitate to discuss it.
Oh my God! He admitted it!
And now the enemies of this new religious thinking basically accuse them of what they said they were conspiring to do. They're like, not only are they conspiring to make a new world order, but they wrote a book called The Aquarian Conspiracy in which they detail their conspiracy. What? I enjoy the book. It's a little hippy dippy, but if you like hippy dippy religious stuff, it's interesting. But we see the woke of the 2010s and we think, where did this all come from? But people have been warning us that this is where the progressive ideology has been headed for decades. You know what? Some of these changes have been pretty good. So we can't even discuss the 1960s without discussing civil rights, nor can we mention the 1970s without Black power. Black rights and the fight for Black rights was a major coming-of-age ritual for millions, including upper middle-class college students and people in academia. The older order subjugated Black people. Yes, it did. The new order would at least try to free them. Black power made a lot of sense in the 1970s too, because now that Black people got all this freedom, what are they going to do with it? You have to free the mind. You can't just free the body. They have to know how to be free. They have to know how to use agency. So the Black struggle is the one with the most authenticity and history in the United States. We fought a major war over Black liberation. And then after we lost a lot of those grounds, we fought again in civil rights in the 60s and 70s. Black people really were renegotiating the social contract. It was a time of major transformation for them, for us. For us. My dad's an immigrant, so it's a long story. I'm kind of like in the Obama kind of mixed demographic. Anyway, watch how a lot of these groups now hide behind the Black struggle. They say, well, the Black struggle is legitimate. Ours is just like that. Well, is it? Is it? You have to remember it's a continual transformation. It's not okay to fix one problem. The next problem has to be fixed. Never mind if there is not another problem will be created. The goal is not helping the group. The goal is transformation. Constant transformation. So while people in California were thinking of these new waves of being in the 1970s, philosophers in France, they were thinking similar thoughts about tearing down old structures and rebuilding with postmodernism. You're going to hear the term postmodernism a lot from the anti-woke. You'll hear it a lot from James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose. They wrote a book on it. Unfortunately, do not have that book, but it's there. It exists if you want to read it.
But if modern is now, isn't postmodern the future?
Postmodernism is an idea that came out around the 70s, which makes it ancient by today's standards, but it's postmodern. They just take these terms. And that's another way they can distinguish of whether or not you went to the right university, is if you know what postmodern is, and it means it happened 50 years ago. And modernism happened in the 20s or whatever. So you need a college course in order to know these definitions. It's not for the poors. Anyway, postmodernism. Some people will say that postmodernism is just a bunch of academic gobbledygook, that it has no greater meaning and it's just circle jerk people talking at each other. Others will say that postmodernism is a theory that says that reality is socially constructed and that you can rewrite reality by changing the language. Now, there is a lot of truth in that. There is actually a lot of truth in that, but it does have its limits. Do you remember that video on the fourth turning that we did where the authors are Howe and Strauss? And they described the hippies, the boomers, as the prophet generation. And basically in that book, the hippies broke down the rigid thought structures of the 1950s. This new religion that they came up with will supposedly liberate us from old power structures. Will do away with racial hierarchy, with class hierarchy, and with the patriarchy. And you know what? Honestly, good? There's no place for me in the world of the 1950s, so I'm kind of happy that the hippies rebelled. Feminism, particularly women's studies, and the struggle for women's rights really paved the way for wokeness as we see it. Why is female subjugation not the original sin of this country, but slavery is? They didn't even think, hey, we should give women rights till years later. Women's subjugation is just too normalized for it to be a sin. There are still people now who want to repeal the 19th Amendment. 19th Amendment gave women the right to vote. And some of these people are women, okay? So feminism is not bad. It's not irrational. And rabid feminists are actually exhibiting the correct response to understanding that the entire society, every society, depends on women's pain. Human flourishing depends on women's suffering. If you don't believe me on that, go to any maternity ward in this country. I'm not talking about some highfalutin intellectual suffering either. I'm talking about blood and pain and tears. in theory, women's studies is a good major, but in practice, it's just not held to the same standards as other disciplines. It gets very esoteric, very mystical. Analytical data is seen as masculine thinking, too rigid, too left brain, too strategic. It's just how men think. And if you go to a women's studies class, feelings and intuition are entertained a lot more. Lived experience, okay? So look, I am absolutely here for your witch's coven, for your dance under the full moon ritual. Drink your potion, howl at that moon, dance naked with the forest nymph, or, the homeless man lives in the tent, whatever. I'm here for it. The First Amendment says go nuts. It's just when this magical thinking makes its way into university classes that it becomes a problem. Because how do you measure all this? Okay? When does an academic article become a short story? Okay? We need to just do the LSD at home. So it's a long story, but the humanities have slowly gained more and more power at universities. This is its own hour-long video. So the point of all that is from women's studies, then we get gender studies. Now, gender studies combines all of this postmodern thinking into its final form, that gender itself is a social construct. Now, before gender roles became negotiable, the roles become negotiable. Good. I would like to negotiate mine. Okay. We need a renegotiation here because I want to be a homemaker and a boss if I so choose. But with gender studies, we get to negotiate what a woman is. Now we have completely divorced ourselves from reality. And we see this complete transformation of society. This is where it gets people to notice woke as the blue-haired threat that it is today. This is what militarized Elon Musk. It wasn't the criminal justice stuff, okay? Honestly, they could have really taken over the world if they didn't back this gender studies stuff, because it wasn't the criminal justice or the racial justice aspect that enraged people. Elon is not attacking the woke mind virus because of criminal justice stuff. It's the gender stuff that tipped public opinion specifically for him. And he's a singularly powerful individual. Also, Elon aside, they're not having fistfights outside of the Glendale school board meetings because of racial justice. So I think this is where woke overplayed its hand. So to me, this doesn't make any sense because it's like they secretly wanted to lose this fight. Like, just take your wins. This 50-year journey from the social and cultural transformation of the 60s and 70s to the social justice movement that we now know as woke. It really started to crystallize in college classrooms and then came out into the real world. Jonathan Haidt has done great research on that, on the leap from university to corporate America. Also, anti-colonialism is a major part of the woke struggle. That came out in the 20th century, early 20th century, when we were ending the colonial era and the empires were falling apart. Okay, we're not going to go into all of that now, but a lot of these anti-colonial movements get lumped in with the American progressive cause. I remember someone commenting on my hashtags gone wild video about hashtag free Palestine with a diatribe on how all of these struggles are connected and the oppressed groups are all fighting one big evil that takes many forms. And so once they defeat this evil, there will be peace. And I'm reading this like, oh, you're insane. Oh, you're insane. And this is your crazy lore. Now, look, I love crazy lore. Okay. I dig into people's crazy lore and I make videos out of it. But you can't run the world on crazy lore. I am not going to listen to Heaven's Gate lore and think, you know what? Let's make public policy with this. Why not? Laws and public policy should be boring. You should not enjoy reading them. Be okay with being bored. I made a video about it. The end result of all of these movements snowballing into this one larger woke movement, the end result has been Queers for Palestine. Queers for Palestine is when woke jumped the shark. Then, like a sand painting, you've just got to wipe it all away and start anew. Queers for Palestine is an absolute break with reality. What about queers in Palestine? Let's describe this dogma that they have, this woke, also this anti-woke dogma, because the anti-woke really describe this. Waking up is a common religious theme, to be awake versus to be asleep. Gurdjieff talked about this. The Buddha talked about this with enlightenment. There are 71 Bible verses that reference opening one's eyes so she might see. We're not religious like that anymore, Politics really has become our religion. A lot of that spirituality that used to be invested in religion, invested in the Bible, has now been invested in politics. So we see the system like the natural world instead of what it really is. The system, to me, is the sum total of all of our institutions. It's our predecessors' best attempts to create guardrails for the natural world and to communicate with other institutions within the system. So the justice system didn't invent human behavior, but it makes the rules to help govern it. You step out of line, you go to jail. Okay, really you govern yourself, but it's with this stick of the government in mind, the stick of the justice system, as opposed to a carrot. Then we have the law for one institution to speak with another institution on your behalf. I don't want to go into sovereign citizen stuff, but that's what law does. It's speaking on your behalf. The system is actually a very superficial part of our reality, but it is one with the power to throw you in jail or to cut off your credit. So the system matters. So the woke say that the system is evil. That's what you'll hear from critics of woke, like James Lindsay, who call it Gnostic. Remember, Gnostics believe that the world is run by a demiurge, who is like a false god, an oppressive god, and the real God is still good, even though he lets the demiurge imprison us. That's funny. The anti-woke seem to hate Gnostics now. Gnostic tradition is metal as hell, and I will defend it. Remember the Cathars walked into the fire? Because why not? Why not? That's metal, dude. I love that. The Cathars, they wanted to break out of the mortal world, and the Catholic Church wanted to reinforce tradition, reinforce the rules. So we see this as another example, see if Lindsay's right, of Gnosticism fighting traditionalism and losing. Now, the fight between transformation and tradition, that is basically woke versus MAGA. I do not agree with Lindsay that Gnosticism is bad because the woke have some Gnostic adjacent ideas. I just don't believe it. Gnosticism, real quick for first-time viewers, says that we can know the divine through first-hand experience. That's knowing Gnostics to know. This world is run by the demiurge, which we discussed. He's a major a-hole. He's a false god, and he kind of works under our God and wants to mess with us. Also, Gnostics believe that we should aspire to the greater spiritual world instead of clinging to this mortal world. Therefore, we shouldn't have kids. And this is why the Catholic Church came down hard on the Cathars. Lindsay kind of exempts the early Christians from his criticism of Gnosticism, as in Jesus and his crew were cool to be Gnostics, but everyone else, that's not okay. You can't live as Gnostics. We talk about this with 12 tribes a lot. Like, if you live the way that the original Christians live, does that make you a cult? Does that make you strange? You kind of just have to admit that maybe Christianity in its original form was very Gnostic, and it's the institutions that want us to have kids, that want us to go on for material gain. Definitely check out that Cathar video if you want to learn more about Gnosticism. So Lindsay says that the woke is Gnostic and Gnosticism is bad. I say maybe, but David Koresh was a Christian, and that doesn't make Christianity bad, okay? I am not making this whole video right now because it's an extensive video, but I'm happy to speak to James Lindsay about this. I emailed him actually about a year ago, and he never got back to me. So, quick summary. The extremes of woke ideology has Gnostic elements, but so does literally everything else. The problem is that we're letting magical thinking get into public policy, full stop. It's not with Gnosticism or whatever sect. It's magical thinking in public policy. So these are conversations people have when they're coming down from shrooms. None of it should be public policy. Man, who really controls the world? The devil must be the real ruler of this world. You know, that's not for government. That's not for something that has to be out on the street. We can't say the system is inherently evil. We are the system. You say we're inherently evil? Well, that's another thing. Okay, so how deep do you want to go on this? It is dogma and stuff. Okay, so some of the anti-woke, the woke are almost satanic. This is interesting because how much of this is projection? Projection of the anti-woke's greatest fears. It's the original battle between good and evil. The Christians are looking for the devil and they see it in woke. God is good and he is the ultimate authority. God is good because he's God and whatever God does is good. He is the Father and his word is law. The evil is the devil and he is prideful and he thinks he should be like God, and that is a sin. I'm not saying that this is what all of the anti-woke people are thinking, but many of the anti-woke are Christians and they feel that they have found the devil because woke ideology does seek to say that we are gods and we can remake the world however we want, but so does science, okay? Now, normally I would say that these Christians are nuts, that they're just out here looking for the devil, but you see it with these gender surgeries and the kids and you look at it and you're like, yeah, that's the devil over there. Yeah, it's definitely the devil. But we know on this channel that this kind of wickedness actually predates Christianity, and the same wickedness often takes the form of Christianity. Look at that Watiko video for everything. Look at that Watiko video for this. So I don't think there is some satanic ritual of child sacrifice. I don't think they have meetings at the gender council and plan how to undermine the nuclear family. Maybe in a metaphysical sense, this is happening, but I don't see that people are getting in their Ubers to go to an Eyes Wide Shut party to plan how to destroy America. I haven't been invited. I'm kind of insulted I haven't been invited to said party. So the point of this is some of the anti-woke see the woke as pure satanic evil played out on the iPhone and maybe at rituals that no one's inviting me to. Now, to understand this kind of panic, this anti-woke panic, we have to go back to the witch trials and the satanic panic of the 1980s. Check out that Crucible video and the Inquisition video for more on that. So, quick overview, because I want to wrap this up, of how it stands to date. Did MAGA destroy woke, or is it just hibernating? So the public seems to have rejected woke in favor of tradition in this latest election. The tide seems to be turning back from liberal to conservative. We know it goes back and forth. So MAGA may have defeated woke, but it has not defeated the idea of renewal behind woke. That will resurface. It has to. In fact, we should thank previous generations for the renewal that we now benefit from. We forget because the progress got out of hand, but we're much better off now than we were in the 1960s. We have interracial marriage, we have gay marriage, women can have bank accounts, we have no-fault divorce, we no longer shame women for having premarital sex, we no longer shame people for being born out of wedlock, for being bastards. Things have gotten a lot better in the last 50 years. They have gotten a little crazy in the past 10, but let's not pretend that it's all been bad. In fact, the MAGA coalition supports a lot of the hippie ideas like racial equality and equality of the sexes in the workplaces. MAGA in the 1960s would be considered a bunch of hippies. That's how far we have come. Right now, woke and the demographic that carries woke are kind of on the ropes. So for my woke viewers, on the ropes is a sports term. It's for sports. Okay, that means that they're taking L's. California, New York, New England, they're all hemorrhaging people. No sane person wants to live this doom and gloom mentality, except for me. And I bought land up north in New York because it's beautiful land. I'm also a masochist and I'm stupid loyal. But the South will continue to expand. It will gain more wealth and more people. They've got higher birth rates on their side too. Conservatives have more children. So well played, South. You did rise again. But in a few decades, sooner if Trump really shits the bed, people will get tired of the same old, okay? They will seek to renew and to transform. It won't be woke. It will be something else. But under the surface, it will be woke's cousin. Colleges and universities, they have long been a haven for left activists and far progressive thinking. Trump recently said that he would fine colleges for continuing in DEI. I don't know how legal this is. If he goes through with his threat and it's upheld by the courts, it could effectively end woke for decades. At some point, even then, the ideas may reemerge, okay? At universities, we should be debating critical race theory, feminism, self-transformation, and postmodernism. The university is a place to debate these things. But of course, the institutions themselves should be unbiased. We're going to see how Trump puts this into practice. We're just going to have to wait and see. Okay. So this, as long as it was, and it was a very long, was a general overview of woke. just let me know at the bottom in the comment section if there's anything you want me to expand upon. Just put a timestamp and say, please expand upon this idea, and I will try to make a video on it. You know, I try to make these videos. It might take me a year, but I do try. Thank you so much. Like, share, and subscribe.